Hi, hello everyone. This is Dnyaneshwar Sanap, working as an assistant professor in the Department of Chemistry at Maratha Vidya Prasarek Samaj, Arts, Commerce and Science College, Dindori. In this video lecture, we will discuss about the interconversion of different type of projection formula into the each others. For example, conversion of dotted line wedge formula into the Fisher projection formula, conversion of Fisher projection formula into the Source or Andreon formula, conversion of source or Andreon formula into the Newman projection formula, and vice versa. To understand the representation of two-dimensional molecule into the three-dimensional molecule, we have to first of all understand the one concept, that is chiral carbon atom. The carbon to which the four different group is attached called as chiral carbon. For example, the carbon to which the one methyl group, one bromine group, one chlorine group and one hydrogen atom is attached, then such a type of carbon is called as chiral carbon atom. And when we studied the molecule in which such a type of carbon is present, that time the actual position of each atom around the carbon atom is very important because it affects the physical as well as chemical property of a molecule. And that's why we have to study the presentation of such a molecule in the three dimension. But at every time the three-dimensional study or drawing of three-dimensional structure on the two dimension is not possible. That's why some basic projection formula is used to convert the three-dimensional structure on the two-dimensional to understand the different type of reaction mechanism and the structure and their properties. There are four different type of projection formula is used for the representation of an organic molecule. The first type of projection formula is dotted line wedge formula, or it also called as flying wedge formula. Or it also called as flying wedge formula. The second type of projection formula is Fisher projection or Fisher-Tollins projection. The third type of formula is Sohorst or Andreon projection formula. And fourth type of formula is Newman projection formula. All these projection formula are basically used to represent the three-dimensional structure of a molecule on the two-dimensional without losing the stereochemistry of an organic molecule. Let us see one by one. First one is dotted line wedge formula or flying wedge formula. After that, we discuss about the Fisher projection formula and interconversion of dotted wedge formula into the Fisher projection formula. After that, we see the Sohorst or Andreon formula and conversion of dotted wedge formula into the source formula or Fisher projection formula into the source formula. And last one, we see the Newman projection formula and conversion of dotted wedge Fisher projection or SOR projection formula into the Newman projection formula. Let us start with the dotted line wedge formula. First one is dotted wedge formula. Let us understand the dotted line wedge formula with the help of example. 1 chloro, 1 bromo, ethane. Here, this carbon atom is chiral in nature, and that's why when we think about the arrangement of this four group around the chiral carbon atom in this space, the bond angle between these two groups, and between these two groups, and between these two groups are 109 degree. And therefore, the three-dimensional structure of a molecule presentation on the paper or on the two-dimensional is difficult, and that's why we write this structural formula into the three-dimensional with the help of dotted wedge formula. First of all, we have to write the carbon chain on the plane of a paper. The first one, second one, here CS3 group and here hydrogen. Here is carbon atom which is chiral in nature. To the same one, we have to attach the two substituent. One is below the plane like this with the dotted line and one is above the plane like this. This below the plane is denoted with the help of dotted line and this above the plane substituent is denoted by using the wedge line, that is darkened line. We write here the one substituent, that is bromine, and here chlorine. Similarly, the another structure in which the substituent, that is chlorine and bromine, is altered and the new structure is formed, in which the chlorine is below the plane and bromine is above the plane. Here CS3. These two structures are different from each other and their physical as well as chemical property are different from each other. During writing the structural formula into the three-dimensional structure, we have to keep in mind the two substituent on the plane and two substituent below and above the plane. Then and then, the three-dimension orientation of an chiral sp3 carbon atom is completed. This is for the one chiral carbon atom. Similarly, we can write the structural formula for the two chiral carbon atom into the dotted wedge formula. Let us see example for the two chiral carbon atom. CS3, CH, CH, here bromine, here chlorine and here chlorine. In this example, basically, two carbon atom is chiral in nature. This carbon first and this carbon second. And we have to write this structural formula into the three-dimensional dotted wedge formula. During writing the structural formula into the three-dimensional dotted line wedge formula, we have to first of all write the longest carbon chain in the zigzag fashion. The longest carbon chain having the three carbon atom, that is carbon number first, carbon number second and carbon number third. We have to write this carbon number in the zigzag fashion like this. Here is carbon number 1, here is carbon number 2 and here is carbon number 3. For the first carbon there is CS3 group. For second carbon there is one chlorine atom and there is one hydrogen atom. That's why we write the one substituent at below the plane and one substituent at above the plane. Similarly, for the carbon number third, the one substituent in the plane, that is hydrogen, and two substituent out of that, one substituent is below the plane and other substituent is above the plane. Write this substituent at this position. For carbon number 2, there is one hydrogen and one chlorine atom. For carbon number 3, there is one bromine and one chlorine atom. This is the presentation of structural formula into the dotted line wedge formula. But there is one problem of writing the substituent on the chiral carbon atom. When we have to write this hydrogen below, when we have to write this chlorine above, when we have to write this bromine above, when we have to write this chlorine below. To answer the same question, the writing of substituent above the plane and below the plane is depend on the configuration of this chiral atom that we discuss in the next topic. That's why does not bother about the writing the substituent from the structural formula towards the dotted wedge formula. Just think about the writing. Let us see the second type of projection formula, that is Fisher projection formula, or it also called as Fisher-Tollins projection formula. Basically, the dotted line wedge formula is inconvenient to draw when there are two or more chiral atoms, and hence the Fisher projection is developed. And the Fisher projection is a convenient method to draw the three-dimensional formula on the plane, and that's why this is widely used to convert the three-dimensional structure into the two-dimensional on the simple paper. Basically, for drawing of Fisher projection formula, some rules are applied, and we have to follow this rule during the drawing of Fisher projection formula from the dotted wedge line formula. Let us see this rule one by one. The first rule is more oxidizing or more oxidizable group on the top side in the Fisher projection. And the second important rule is longest chain of carbon atom is placed vertically. These two rules are very important during the conversion of dotted line wedge formula into the Fisher projection formula. Let us see the example. First, we will take the example of one chiral atom. Case first, one chiral atom. Let us see the example. CH3 carbon and here CHO, and the two remaining group is, one is hydrogen and other is hydroxy. Write the structure into the proper orientation. Rotate this molecule on the plane via clockwise or anti-clockwise in such way that we get a more oxidizable group or easily oxidizable group on the top hand side. The CHO is a more oxidizable or easily oxidizable group, and that's why we have to write this on the top hand side. And the actual orientation is like this. Here CHO and here CH3. And the two remaining group as it is. Below group is hydrogen, we have to write as it is hydrogen, and above group is OH or hydroxy, we have to write as it is. This molecule is rotated in the plane only, in the anti-clockwise direction into the 90 degree. This molecule is left-handed angle, that means the angle between the two groups which is on the plane is at the left hand side. We can also write this molecule into the right-handed angle type of molecule like this. CH3 here and CHO here. But the angle is completely invert, and that's why we have to write the group which is above in the left hand side at the bottom in the right hand side angle molecule or structure, and the group below in the left hand side we have to write in the above side in the right hand angle side or right handed angle molecule. Basically, we can easily convert this one chiral carbon molecule into the Fisher projection formula, but the two and more chiral carbon molecule is somewhat tedious to draw into the Fisher projection formula. Let us write this right-handed angle molecule into the Fisher projection formula from dotted line wedge formula. During the writing from dotted wedge to the Fisher, we have to keep in mind the chain of carbon atom is drawn vertically like this, and the two group which is below and above the plane is right on the horizontal line like this. That means we have to create the symbol like a plus sign and put this group one by one on the Fisher projection with the help of some rule. The more oxidizing and top group is right on the top in the Fisher projection, that is CHO. Next, the second group in the plane we have to write at the bottom in the Fisher projection formula. In dotted line formula for the right-handed angle molecule, the group which is shown by wedge line is right on the right hand side in the Fisher projection formula, and the group which is shown by the dotted line we have to write on the left hand side in the Fisher projection formula. This is the actual conversion of dotted wedge line formula into the Fisher projection formula for the one chiral carbon molecule only. Similarly, we can write the dotted line wedge formula of an left-handed angle molecule into the Fisher projection formula. For drawing the same molecule, we have to apply the same rule. First of all, we have to draw the plus sign in which the group which is on the plane in the molecule we have to write on the vertical line, and group which is below and above the plane we have to write on the horizontal line. Let us write this group one by one. The top side group, that is aldehyde group or oxidizable group, is right at the top of an vertical line, that is CHO here. The remaining second group which is in the plane we have to write at the bottom side, that is CS3 at here. For left-handed angle molecule, that means the angle between the two substituent which is on the plane is left-handed or on the left-hand side. That time the group which is shown by wedge line we have to write it on the left-hand side, and group which is shown by the dotted line we have to write on the right-hand side of a carbon-carbon vertical chain. And this is the actual representation of dotted wedge line formula into the Fisher projection formula for both molecules. Here I will write the rules in the short, that is summarization. The group in the plane. Group in plane. Write on vertical line. Second case, group with dotted line. We have to write on the right hand side. Group with wedge line. We have to write on the left hand side. This is for the molecule which is left-handed angle on the chiral center. Similarly, same rules for the right-handed angle type of molecule. The groups in plane or on the plane, we have to write on vertical line. Second case, group which is shown by dotted line, we have to write on the left hand side on horizontal line. Third case is group with wedge line, we have to write on right hand side in the horizontal line. This is all about the conversion of one chiral center type of molecule from the dotted line wedge formula into the Fischer projection formula. The case second, in which we have to study the two or more chiral atom in the molecule and their conversion from the dotted line wedge formula into the Fischer projection formula. Second case, molecule containing two or more chiral carbon is present. Let us see the example. 2,3-dihydroxybutyraldehyde. First of all, we have to write this carbon chain which is on the horizontal into the vertical line. And for that, we have to rotate this molecule into the clockwise or anti-clockwise direction to get an carbon number 2 and carbon number 3 on the vertical line. This is the carbon number 1, this is the carbon number 2, this is carbon number 3 and this is carbon number 4. We have to rotate this molecule in such a way that we get an carbon number 2 and carbon number 3 on the vertical line in the molecule for our convenient. But during the rotation of molecule, rotate molecule in such a way that after rotation, the molecule containing more oxidizing group or easily oxidizing group will becomes on the top hand side. That means the CHO group we have to take on the top hand side during the rotation of molecule. Here, the more oxidizing group is aldehyde than that of CH3. That's why we have to keep this aldehyde group on the top hand side. And the rotation of molecule is with the anti-clockwise direction and we get the more oxidizable group on the top hand side. Let us rotate and write this molecule into the other dotted line projection formula, in which carbon 2 and carbon 3 on the vertical line and carbon 1 on the right-handed angle side, that is CHO group, and a remaining second carbon, that is carbon number 4 on the left-hand side in the new structure. We just rotate this molecule into the anti-clockwise direction into the 90° only. Does not do any changes during the rotation of molecule on the plane. This is the very important, because whenever you change the position of substituent during the rotation, the whole molecule gets changes and the whatever stereochemistry and the structure of a molecule into the dotted line formula into the Fischer projection formula get completely changes. That's why during rotation does not change the actual position of an substituent in the molecule. In this case, basically carbon 2 and 3, in which the CHO group, that is aldehyde group, on the right hand side and CH3 group on the left hand side when we see from this angle. That's why I write here CH3 group on the left hand side and CHO group on the right hand side on the vertical line. Next, we have to write the remaining 4 substituent on the same respective carbon one by one. Here hydroxy on the second carbon atom at the bottom side or away from the observer. Write this first of all. Hydroxy. The remaining second group, that is hydrogen, on the top hand side. Write this as it is. Here for carbon number 3, hydroxy at the bottom side. and hydrogen on the above side. This structure and this structure are one and the same. There is no change in the structure. Keep in mind. Next, we have to write this carbon number 1 to carbon number 4 in such a way that we get this type of shape. That means carbon number 1, carbon number 2, carbon number 3 and carbon number 4 like C. But here the carbon number 1, carbon number 2 and carbon number 3 is same place as we like, but carbon number 4 on the opposite side. And that's why we have to rotate this molecule in such a way that we get this CH3 group, that is fourth carbon, on the right hand side. But during rotation of this chiral carbon around this carbon-carbon bond, that is carbon number 2 and carbon number 3 bond, we have to keep in mind there is no changes will be occurs on the chirality of this carbon number 3. That means the position of substituent in the 360 degree will not be changes. And now we will rotate this carbon 2 carbon 3 bond in the clockwise direction or anti-clockwise direction as we like. But we have to shift this CH3 group from the left hand side towards the right hand side. This group will be completely shifted from left to the right. Then the angle is changes from 0 degree to the 180 degree. And that's why we have to also change the angles or the position of these two substituent. Otherwise, the configuration or stereochemistry of this carbon will be changes. Let us write the new structure after rotation. Carbon number 2 and carbon number 3. This is carbon number 1, that is aldehydic. Remaining two groups on the carbon number 2 is as it is, that is hydroxy and hydrogen. Second, we shift this CH3 group by rotation of this C2C3 bond towards the right hand side, and we get CH3 here. But during this writing, this group which is above the plane and which is below the plane, we have to keep in mind after rotation into the 180 degree, the group which is below the plane in this structure will be comes into the above plane and vice versa. And group which is above the plane will goes to the below the plane. Then and then the stereochemistry of both molecule is one and the same. This C type of presentation for the two chiral center molecule is very important, and it is very convenient to draw the Fischer projection formula from the dotted wedge line formula. This is carbon number 1, this is carbon number 2, this is carbon number 3 and this is carbon number 4. Let us write this molecule into the Fischer projection formula. During writing the Fischer projection formula, we have to write the vertical line for carbon number 1 towards the carbon number 4. Here the carbon number 1 and here the carbon number 4. This is carbon number 1, carbon number 2 and carbon number 3 and carbon number 4. Next, writing of substituent which is below the plane and above the plane from the dotted wedge line formula into the Fischer projection formula. Here this hydroxy group is below plane in the dotted wedge line formula, and here this hydrogen is above. Let us write the substituent of carbon number 2 from the dotted wedge line into the Fischer projection formula. Basically, when the carbon 1 to carbon 4 chain is like C, then the substituent which is above the plane in the dotted wedge line formula, we have to write this substituent on the right hand side in Fischer projection formula. And that's why I will write this hydrogen here, and the substituent which is below the plane in the dotted wedge line formula, we have to write it on the left hand side in Fischer projection formula. And that's why I write this hydroxy here. Similarly, for the carbon number 3, the group which is shown by darker line or wedge line, which we have to write on the right hand side in the Fischer projection formula, and group which is on the bottom side in the dotted wedge line formula, we have to write on the left hand side in the Fischer projection formula. This is the basic condition during the writing of dotted wedge line formula into the Fischer projection formula. For conversion, we have to keep these three concepts in mind. First one is C type of carbon 1 to 4 chain. Second one is below group we have to write on the left hand side, and above group we have to write on the right hand side in the Fischer projection formula. Let us see another example for conversion of dotted line formula into the Fischer projection formula. First step, rotate this molecule in such a way that we get an carbon number 2 and carbon number 3 vertically, and carbon number 1 and carbon number 4 on the left and right hand side of an carbon 2 and carbon 3 vertical line. This is the vertical line for carbon number 2 and carbon number 3. But during rotation, we have to keep in mind the more oxidizable group will becomes on the top hand side, and that's why we rotate this molecule in the anti-clockwise direction into the 90 degree. After rotation, we get an COH on the left hand side and CS3 on the right hand side, and write the remaining groups as it is on the respective carbon. This is carbon number first, this is carbon number second, this is carbon number third, and this is carbon fourth. For second carbon, hydroxy is above and hydrogen is below the plane. Similarly, for carbon number 3, bromine is below and hydrogen is above the plane. This is first rule of rotation, clockwise or anti-clockwise rotation. The second rule, in which we have to arrange the carbon 1 to carbon 4 into the C type of structure. Here, carbon 4, 3 and 2 are in the position of an C, but carbon 1 is on the opposite side, and that's why we have to rotate this carbon 2-3 bond into the clockwise direction or anti-clockwise direction in such a way that we get this position of COH group on the right hand side. After rotation, anti-clockwise direction, here CS3 as it is for carbon number 4. But after rotation, this COH will becomes here, and the position of these two substituent will be changes. The position of these two substituent, that is bromine and hydrogen, is as it is. The position of COH will be changes from the left hand side towards the right hand side from the vertical line, and that's why the position of this hydroxy and hydrogen also changes. The hydroxy, which is above the plane into this structure, will becomes at the bottom side into the new structure, and hydrogen will comes to the above side like this. Then and then the stereochemistry will be written. Let us convert this molecule into the Fischer projection. For Fischer projection, we have to write the carbon 1 to carbon 4 chain vertically. Here carbon 1, here carbon 2, and here carbon 3, and here carbon 4. The group on the carbon first is acidic group, that is COH, and the group at the 4 carbon is CS3, right as it is. After that, we have to write the substituent which is on the carbon number 2 and carbon number 3, that is on the chiral carbon. As we know that the group on the front side from the observer, that is hydrogen and hydrogen from the carbon number 2 and carbon number 3, will be comes to the right hand side into the Fischer projection formula with respect to the vertical carbon-carbon chain, and group which is shown by dotted line into the dotted line wedge formula will be comes to the left hand side into the Fischer projection formula. And this is the final structure for the dotted line wedge formula into the Fischer projection formula for the same molecule. The next important representation of molecule is Schwarz formula or anion projection formula. Let us see it. Basically, this projection formula is drawn by representing the central carbon-carbon bond diagonally and the lower end, which denotes the carbon near to the observer, while the top end denotes the carbon away from the observer. Let us understand with the help of example. Let us take the example of tartaric acid. For conversion of this Fischer projection formula into the Andreon formula, we have to keep certain rule in our mind. The first rule we have to keep in mind, the carbon-carbon chain of an molecule we have to write diagonally. Observe this molecule in this direction. During the writing the substituent from Fischer projection formula into the source formula, we have to keep in mind this reverse U is an carbon 1 to carbon 4 chain. Basically, the upper diagonal side is carbon 2 and the lower diagonal side is carbon 3, and here the carbon number 4 and here the carbon number 1. We have to write this carbon number 1 substituent on its respective position, that is COH at the first position and CH3 at fourth position. After that we have to write this substituent which is right hand side in the Fischer projection formula and the substituent which is on the left hand side in the Fischer projection formula on the source formula. But during writing we have to keep in mind the substituent which is on the right hand side in the Fischer projection formula we have to write on the right hand side in the source formula, that is here and here. The angle between these two substituents is 120. That means the angle between COH group and hydroxy group is 120. Similarly, the angle between these two substituents also 120. Remaining two substituents on the carbon 2 and carbon 3 we have to write on the source formula. But for writing we have to keep in mind the two substituents will be write on the left hand side in the source formula one by one, like this. That means we have to simply keep in mind, first of all write the diagonal line and 1 and 4 substituent towards the bottom side. This is diagonal line and these two substituent on the bottom side or on the vertical line towards the downward side. The second rule is the substituent on the right hand side in the Fischer projection formula. We have to write it on the right hand side on the Andreon formula. The third rule is the substituent on the left hand side in the Fischer projection formula. We have to write this substituent on the left hand side in Andreon formula. This three rule is very important for the conversion of Fischer projection formula into the source formula or into the Andreon formula. Let us take another example. Conversion of this Fischer projection formula into the source formula. For conversion, convert this carbon chain into diagonal line. Diagonal line indicates the carbon number 1 and carbon number 4. This is the carbon number 1 and this is the carbon number 4. Write this substituent on the carbon number 1 and carbon number 4 as it is. Next, we have to write the substituent on the second chiral carbon. This is the second chiral carbon and the substituent which is on the right hand side in the Fischer projection formula, we have to write it on the right hand side in the source formula. Similarly, the substituent on the left hand side, we have to write it on the left hand side in the Andreon formula. Similarly, for the third chiral carbon, the substituent which is on the right hand side from the vertical line, which we have to write on the right hand side in the Andreon formula, and the substituent which is on the left hand side, we have to write it on the left hand side on the Andreon formula. This is the simple conversion of Fischer projection formula into the Dnyaneshwar formula. The fourth type of projection formula is Newman projection formula. Basically, in this representation, the molecule is viewed along the axis joining the two carbon atoms, and the two overlapping carbon atoms are shown as the circle. The bond attached to the front carbon atom are joined to the central, whereas those at the rear carbon atom are shown at the periphery. In this case, we can easily convert the Dnyaneshwar formula into the Newman projection formula or Fisher projection formula into the Newman projection formula. Let us see with the help of example. Case first, Fisher into Newman projection, and case second, in which Dnyaneshwar into Newman projection. Let us see case first. Let us take example. This is an Fisher projection formula. We have to convert it into the Newman. We can easily convert it into the Newman projection. First of all, we observe this molecule in this direction, and that time we having this carbon atom is near to us and this carbon atom is away from us, and that's why it denoted by large circle. Here the chiral carbon, which is shown by the small darkened circle, we have to write it with the help of triangle with the bond angle 120 like this, and the carbon atom, which is shown with the help of hollow circle, we have to write with the help of circle like this. Similarly, here the substituent for chiral carbon second, and here 1. This is the carbon number 4, this is carbon number 3rd. Carbon number 2nd is shown by circle and the substituent on it. The substituent which on the vertical line we have to write at the bottom side. The COH on the back side carbon atom and CS3 on the front side carbon atom. Here the substituent which is on the right hand side, we have to write it on the right hand side, and the substituent which is on the left hand side, we have to write it on the left hand side in the Newman projection formula. The chiral carbon number 2 is shown by circle, and the substituent on the chiral carbon second, that is hydroxy, on the right hand side, and we have to write this right hand side substituent on the right hand side in the Newman projection formula. But during writing, do not write this carbon number 2 substituent on the carbon number 3 or carbon number 3 substituent on the carbon number 2. Keep in mind. Similarly, this CS3 group on the left hand side, and we have to write this CS3 on the left hand side carbon atom. Similarly, for carbon number 3, that is chiral carbon number 3, bromine is on the right hand side and hydrogen is on the left hand side. Let us see the case second. Take this same example. Convert this Fisher projection into the Dnyaneshwar formula first of all. Draw the diagonal line to vertical line on each terminal of diagonal and write the substituent 1 on the carbon number 2 at the top side of a diagonal, that is COH here and CS3 here. Substituent which is on the right hand side, we have to write on the right hand side, that is hydroxy and bromine. Here on the left hand side hydrogen, and for carbon number 2 there is CS3. Convert this structure into the Newman projection formula. This is very easier to convert the structure into the Newman projection formula than that of Fisher for the new members. This is also easier, but for new members it is somewhat difficult. Let us observe this molecule in this direction. Let us give the numbering to the carbon 1, 2, carbon 3 and carbon number 4. The carbon number 3 is near to observer and carbon number 2 which is away from observer. And during conversion of anterior formula into the Newman projection formula, we have to write the triangle of an substituent on the front side for an carbon number 3 and the substituent on 3. The substituent at bottom side is CS3. Substituent on the right hand side is bromine and substituent on the left hand side is hydrogen. Let us write the substituent of carbon number 2. Carbon number 2 is shown with the help of circle on the same carbon atom and write the substituent on carbon atom one by one. The substituent at the bottom side is COH group. Substituent on the right hand side is hydroxy, then write the hydroxy on the right hand side. The substituent, which is CS3, on the left hand side, we have to write it on the left hand side in the Newman projection formula. This is the simple conversion of anterior formula into the Newman projection formula. This is all about the conversion of two-dimensional structure into the three-dimensional structure. That means conversion of two-dimensional structure into the dotted line wedge formula, dotted line wedge formula structure into the Fisher projection formula, Fisher projection formula structure into the anterior formula structure into the Newman projection formula. We can also write the structure presentation in the reverse order also, and that we can do as an home assignment. In next lecture, we will discuss about the conformational isomerism in the alkenes. Thank you for watching.